don't know what I'm going toward yet, but I know that I won't get the answers here. I knew that I had to take a step toward that future as yet undefined and figure it out. And I think so many entrepreneurs and so many just people in general, even if you're not called toward an entrepreneurial lifestyle, and I didn't call it that then, I just knew I wanted to take a shot at being out on my own, whatever that was going to look like.
Greetings and salutations, good people. My name is Ernest Comer III, and this is the Pancakes from Scratch podcast. I love to talk to good people doing great things. Today is no exception to the rule. I have the Claire Chandler with me today. Claire, thank you so much for making the time.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mentioned I got a few questions I want to dive into, and I'm excited for a great conversation. But before we get too deep into it, what's giving you energy this week?
We had a great fireworks show. So when we're recording this, we had the Independence Day holiday earlier this week. And I live along the shore of New Jersey. I try not to call it Jersey Shore because it's got some connotations there that we try to overcome. But yeah, it's been a great week so far. And, just what energizes me is what I get to do every day, quite honestly.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Yeah, we talked about the 4th of July holiday this year fell on a Tuesday. And so Monday was part of the weekend, but not really. Some folks were working, some folks were not.
I know we're all out of rhythm. We all had to do kind of a reset yesterday, which was Wednesday the 5th. And just kind of figure out how we were going to get a week's worth of things accomplished in what turned out to be a 3-day week. Right. So I guess this is our Wednesday now. I don't know, because it's Thursday, but maybe this is our Wednesday. We're all screwed up.
Yeah, I'm all the way thrown off, but hey, we're gonna get through it, and it'll be the weekend again in no time. So
that's right.
We can reset.
Absolutely.
Oh man, good stuff. So to start, I like to have folks just reflect on when you think about some of the biggest challenges you faced in the work that you've done and really in life. Is there one that stands out to you as something that really has helped shape who you are and how you do the work that you do?
To your point, I think there are so many challenges that I could take that question in so many different directions, but I think the one that stands out for me, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a solopreneur, I'm a business owner, I'm all of those things. And when you talk to most entrepreneurs, everyone sort of seems to have this transformational moment that propelled them into their entrepreneurial journey. And I am certainly no different. Back in 2011, I was working in corporate America after, by the way, graduating college and swearing I was never going to go into corporate. That wasn't, what my family did. My parents weren't from corporate, whatever. But that's where the opportunities were. And at the time, I was vice president of human resources for a pretty big environmental company, and traveling all the time. And I'll spare you all the details. Anybody in your audience who's worked in corporate knows the hamster wheel, right? Yep. And I got diagnosed with cancer, and that diagnosis took my world. First of all, split my world into before and after, right? Because anyone who gets a diagnosis like that, it's like everything that came before you got that news and then everything that followed. And it forced me to go from 150 miles an hour in my corporate job to zero. I was required to take a month off of work. Now, when you're on the corporate hamster wheel, it is never a good time to take vacation. So imagine trying to find time to take off a month, because I had to deal with this, right? I had to have surgery, I had to have recovery, whatever. I am cancer-free now, so that is not how this story ends. Thank you. But it was very much a challenge, right? It was a challenge for me in terms of offloading everything that I did and letting go of it and trusting my team. I had an amazing team at the time, and they all stepped up like I knew that they would. But I had to get over this, I'm letting everybody down because I'm not going to be there for a month because I had to focus on something deeply personal, health-wise, and all of that sort of thing. So that was a challenge. But during that month off, surgery, recovery, I spent a lot of time in the quiet. I got into this morning routine of getting up early, and I'm not a morning person. Reading the Bible. Somebody had given us, a couple of folks from work had given me a Kindle, and it came preloaded with the Bible. So I'm like, finally, I'm gonna read the Bible. I keep saying I'm gonna do that.
Yep.
And I had this kind of morning routine, right? And it was this time of real, just deep reflection in the silence. And it was in that silence that I finally couldn't outrun that voice in my head that had been trying to ask me for years, are you doing what you're passionate about?
Ooh.
And I had to acknowledge that even though I had spent close to 15 years in this company, I had a great team. I loved the people that I worked with. I loved the work that we did. It wasn't revving my engine. It wasn't energizing me. Going back to your very first question, what energizes me this week, right? And once I had the answer to that, I had to do something with that information, right? So I spent the rest of that time off really kind of reflecting on, okay, if it's not this, then what am I meant to do? What is going to rev my engine? What is going to energize me? What is going to make me feel fulfilled? And that started my entrepreneurial journey. So it was the deepest challenge of my life, having to face cancer and the reality of your own mortality and all of that. But it was a gift because it forced me to come face to face with, I wasn't playing full out. I wasn't in a role that truly afforded me the opportunity to give my full self in the way that I knew that I could.
Okay, that's heavy.
That was a
That
really
is,
long answer. Sorry about that.
no, that's a great answer. What? Okay, but God, like you're in the middle of this career, and then all of a sudden you're hit with this barrier, this diagnosis, and now like it's a true test of who you are in that moment, right? And like the first thing I think you called out was like having to trust the team to handle the work, right? And I think that alone is like, that's a massive leap to take to be able to trust in that way. So I want to make sure we talk about that a little bit. But beyond that, it's like now your world is shaken up in this way that it's like, are you actually doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing? Are you actually doing the thing that's attached to who you are, that the assignment on your life? How do you decide, or do you decide? Does it feel like a calling? What is that experience of like recognizing the need to shift and then just making the decision? Because I'm just trying to process like, man, what what?
Yeah. I think so many people struggle with that very question, right? It's kind of easier to come face to face with or come to grips with the fact that you're not doing what you're truly passionate about, or you're just not feeling it. It is a wholly different question to then say, okay, if it's not this, then what is it? I think some entrepreneurs have that epiphany, like just deep within them, and they know how to pull that out and they go, yep, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm called to do. For others of us like me, it wasn't that clear. I knew the path that I was on, which was for, kind of being groomed toward an upper executive position within corporate America, was a very real path for me, but it was not fulfilling me. It was not what I was really interested in. And don't get me wrong, the compensation was great, right? Being a vice president of human resources in a really stable company. I remember when I came back and I gave notice and I stayed for a few months, right? Because I had been there for close to 15 years and I didn't know what I was going to do next. I just knew I wasn't going to do that anymore. And so I had kind of this protracted sort of going away. And I remember I had a big going away party. I'd been there for close to 15 years and people kept pulling me aside going, are you sure you know what you're doing? Like, have you thought this through? And I'm like, I've thought through the decision to go. I don't know what I'm going toward yet, but I know that I won't get the answers here. I knew that I had to take a step toward that future as yet undefined and figure it out. And I think so many entrepreneurs and so many just people in general, even if you're not called toward an entrepreneurial lifestyle, and I didn't call it that then, I just knew I wanted to take a shot at being out on my own, whatever that was going to look like. But I think for all of us, we just have to take that step forward. It doesn't have to be a big step, but it's got to be forward. And you have to just open yourself up to what are the possibilities that could await me if I let go of things that don't really serve me.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to bring it back to trust,
Yeah.
because what I'm hearing is like, there's a need to trust yourself. There's a need to trust like fate. There's a need to trust the people around you. Do you consider yourself a trusting person? Like, where does that come from?
Such a heavy question. It's interesting because I've always considered myself a naive person.
Mm,
I don't know that I'm necessarily trusting. I mean, I've never actually put it in those terms, but I guess, I mean, now that you've sort of put the question to me, I do tend to assume that other people have a positive intention until and unless they prove me otherwise. So does that mean that I'm trusting? I don't know, I guess. I'm more critical of myself, so I call that kind of naive, right? Because you can get burned doing that. But if you close yourself off and you just assume that everybody around you is a liar and a cheat, then aren't you going to attract more of that into your universe?
ooh. Oh, okay. I'm sure somebody watching this is now questioning their whole life.
Which you have to do from time to time. So let's, if that prompts people to do that, then go for it.
Absolutely. Oh man, aren't you if that's what you assume, aren't you attracting it to your life? I think that's a super powerful point. Um, wow. Wow. Okay. Okay. And so yes, to your point, like trusting people can get you burned. But that's part of the point. There's recognizing the courage that is underlying when it comes to trusting people, trusting time and space. There's courage in that, and it's a valiant and virtuous decision to have trust. And when it works out, it works out. When it doesn't, it doesn't. But maybe it's just worth it, right? Maybe it's just
Yeah.
worth it to trust. That's got to be a thing.
Yeah. It's so deep what you just said. And I think there are two types of people, right? I think there are those who kind of approach life with trust is earned, and I'm not going to trust you until you prove that you can be trustworthy. And then there's the other, which says, yes, trust is earned, but I have to earn it first. So I am going to extend that trust to you and hope that you reflect that back, right? I really do think that most people fall into one of those two camps.
I could see it. That's big, man. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. So, all right, you are in this corporate gig. This moment happens. Life changes. You adjust. You pivot, and now you're in this entrepreneurial universe. Tell us about what it is you're doing in this space. What does entrepreneurship look like for you?
Yeah. So it's now 2023. That moment, as you described it, happened in 2011. And it's been an amazing journey. And it's been a journey of pivots and of growth and of self-discovery and of really narrowing in on, of all the things that I could do, what do I really want to do, right? Because I didn't want to treat a corporate job for just a job where I'm going to take any sort of work as long as it brings in income. because isn't that kind of what a lot of people go through the motions of just their 9-to-5 job, right? So I didn't want to do that. But in the beginning, I mean, it took me about 2 years between, 2011, late 2011, when I left corporate, to September of 2013, when I founded my company, Talent Boost. I was figuring it out. Like, I was literally kind of walking the earth and putting myself out there and figuring out how to attract clients, which I had never had to do before. I was never in a sales or a marketing role. I was in a communications role and public relations and that sort of marketing from time to time. But I never had to go out and hunt for my food, right? Like, my paycheck was regular. And as long as I showed up and did a good job and all that sort of thing, the paychecks kept coming. And now I switched literally overnight to, I remember that very first day. So, my last day of work was a Friday. That following Monday, I brewed a big pot of coffee and I went to my new home office and I opened up my brand new laptop that I had treated myself to. And I had no clue what I was doing. I had absolutely not the first inclination of how I was going to go out and get my first client. Right.
Yeah.
And so those first 2 years were literally, like, I look back at it now and it's like, it could have been a sitcom. I mean, it wouldn't have gotten a lot of ratings, but like, it could have been like a comedy, because I was just making it up. And I was like, well, if I'm just me and I just go to networking events and they just, apply to different things and I'll figure it out. And eventually, I got a couple of like freelancing assignments and things that were within my wheelhouse, and those grew to bigger engagements. And then one day, I landed a big client, and they continue to be one of my clients today. And I helped them. It's interesting because it wasn't sort of this cold calling sales technique. It was someone that I had worked with in my corporate days, and he was asked to start up a new company, and he wanted me to come work for him. And I said, respectfully, I'm not going back to working for somebody else, but I will help you build out the company. And that continues to be a relationship today. That continues to be one of my clients, one of my favorite clients, one of my best clients. It really helped me to shape my persona and my brand as this independent consultant. So fast forward to today, what I specialize in is helping large organizations, typically through the HR door, because that was my most recent sort of experience and expertise coming out of corporate, but helping large organizations align their strategy, their teams, their culture, their leaders, so that they can actually achieve the growth that they are setting out to achieve. And that alignment is what is missing in a lot of organizations. So I help them through, a variety of things, whether that's organizational design and assessment, one-on-one or group coaching, HR mentoring. So it takes a lot of different forms, but the core of it is around how do we integrate and align the right organizational culture to the strategy so that you can achieve your outcomes.
Okay. And is this as a solopreneur? It's just you?
It is just me primarily. I have a great network of strategic partners that I pull in from time to time as needed. But I'm a little bit of I know you'll relate, because all us solopreneurs are kind of the same. I'm a little bit of a control freak, right? So I still struggle with that letting go and what can I pass off to somebody else? That continues to be, you're like just a little bit, right? I mean, that continues to be a challenge, a growth opportunity for me, but I love the work. Like I love what I do. And, formed my company 10 years ago now. I am at the point where I can choose to work with clients that get me, and through people that I enjoy spending time with. If they're a jerk, if we're not compatible from a chemistry perspective, if it's not somebody I would invite to my own home, thanks, but no thanks, right? There's good revenue and there's bad revenue. And to me, the revenue is sort of, I don't want to say it's secondary. I am by no means independently wealthy, but it's less of the score that I keep than I did in the beginning. And it's really about, what is the work that I get to do? Do I get to do the work that I love with people that I enjoy? in ways that, continue to give me the freedom and flexibility to be as authentic to myself as possible.
Yeah, that's, man, it's such a powerful place to be in, to have that mentality and to recognize the value there. And I think a lot of folks, when we step into this world of entrepreneurship, um, and we stumble and fall and we bump our heads, as entrepreneurs do, it can be really tough to stay just locked in and committed to creating the type of leadership experience and entrepreneurial experience that you want to be having. Because you recognize the need, like the financial need. Like, I want to work for folks who I like, but at the same time, I got to pay these bills. How do you, what do I call it? Like ebbs and flows, the seasons of fast and feast, feast
Yeah.
and
Feast and famine. Yeah. Yeah.
feast and famine. Thank you.
Yeah.
How do you survive those seasons of famine and keep intact
Mm.
that value of working with folks who you should be working with?
Yeah. It's the golden question, right? Because like I said, like we don't go into solopreneurship or entrepreneurship or business ownership or any of those things to be miserable. It's the reason most of us left corporate was because we saw what we were becoming. And the lid on that box was getting tighter and tighter in corporate. And it's interesting because now I'm on the outside looking in, and those are my best clients because they see the box they've put themselves into, and they know that's not the best way to lead or to build a company or to grow or to serve clients, but they don't quite know how to get out of their own box. But to your point, there is such seasonality to most of our businesses as entrepreneurs and consultants, whether you are serving large corporate clients or you are, doing more individual work or working with smaller businesses, startups, et cetera. And I've worked with the full spectrum of that. I have found that while it's great and it's noble to be able to say, I'm only going to work with people that I, can stand to be in the same room with and want to invite to my home and all that sort of thing. Sometimes the reality is they're not as steady of a stream of clients. Your pipeline is not as full sometimes of those types of clients. So as entrepreneurs, it is really important, especially when you're first starting out, but throughout the lifetime of your business, to have some, and I'm going to call it revenue stream, because let's be practical. We have to be able to keep the lights on and pay the bills. And as you said, and sort of support the lifestyle that we want to live. And so to do that, you have to have some platform of steady revenue to sustain you when those bigger peaks turn into valleys, right? And that is very unique to you and your business model and your skill set and what you want to do. Sometimes it's a matter of productizing your knowledge. Sometimes it's a matter of, whether that's a course, it's a webinar, it's a paid speaking engagement, whatever that looks like for you, it is important to identify that as well and keep a couple of those things running and maintained, so that you can have at least a minimum revenue stream coming in, so that you can be selective and you can focus kind of your higher level energy on those bigger clients or those bigger engagements that really fuel you.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Keeping an eye toward cash flow, right? And process and system, so that as much as we can have an awareness for the seasonality of what we do, if we recognize the seasonality of it, be intentional about what it means to move in and through those seasons intentionally, right? And being prepared for what is coming. It's not a surprise. Like, yes, that season is right around the corner. So what are you going to do about it? How do you establish that platform? How do you prepare yourself for what that season is going to look like? so that you don't catch yourself off guard and put yourself in that position of just anxiety and fear around what comes next and when you're going to get the next opportunity, because
Yeah.
that it's that emotional experience that drives the poor decision making. Right. So if you can
Yes.
set yourself up for emotional well-being, then maybe you can set yourself up for some better decision making in terms of bringing on new clients, structuring the business in new ways as you continue to grow, and things like that. Do you see your business like expanding, or do you see it as something that's going to continue to operate on the level that you're at today and just continue to refine and strengthen at this scale?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both right now and for the immediate future, and I would say the next 18 months or so. I remain committed to being a solopreneur. Yes, because I'm still a control freak. I don't think I'm ever going to get rid of that, but also because the work that I do and the people that I do that work with, I truly do love, and it would be hard for me to give that up, to delegate that to somebody else, and to step away from the client fulfillment part. Having said that, though, I have recognized more and more keenly over the last few years the absolute mission criticalness of standardizing and automating and systematizing the back end things,
Yeah.
right? The lower complexity, higher volume things. Doesn't mean I've done it yet. I'm going to be completely candid with you. Doesn't mean I've succeeded in that yet. But that is sort of it's the two goals, right? It's how can I, because if that's truly what I'm passionate about, which it is, and you could probably tell, the fulfillment of what I do through clients that I enjoy and work that I love, that's what drives me. So the only way that I can continue to focus on that is if I'm not distracted by the other things. So I need to figure out a way to do, and this is sort of this current problem that I am solving, which is how do I standardize, systematize, do away with, outsource, automate, whatever, those other things that distract me from the pure joy of the fulfillment with clients that I love.
That's awesome.
So I'm working on that. So that's kind of my challenge, right? While I stay focused on client fulfillment.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And we all have, the thing that's like, this is what I'm working on right now. Like
Yeah.
I'm getting through it. I'm trying. And I've worked with so many, mentors and coaches who've tried to pull me away, who have pulled me away from using the language of try.
Mm.
To stop saying you're trying, you're doing it. You're doing it. It's like, am I though?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like,
it's, well, and it's so difficult, right? Because especially as solopreneurs, because we're used to doing everything, there's sort of this battle that goes on in my head, right? Because it's like, okay, for all the different things that I do, which are the things that I can standardize or templatize in the delivery so that I'm not doing it from scratch every time.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of comes back to the title of this podcast, sort of pancakes from scratch. Right. But even pancakes from scratch follow a tried and true recipe. Right. So, but I mean, the battle is always like, well, but if I standardize it too much, is it going to get stale? And I mean, the beauty of what I do is they get the fully authentic me and my energy and my creativity. And it's a new experience every time. And it's great to be a new experience every time. But for the client, it's going to be new to them anyway. And so what you really need to do is be able to show up in your truly confident expert self and deliver to them a consistent experience that works, right? So how do you strike that balance between keeping it fresh and energetic for them and, impactful and action-oriented and, valuable and all those things with just enough newness in it to keep yourself motivated? Because I never want to be doing something that is just so second nature. I don't have to think about it anymore because I get bored very easily. And then I'm going to look for the next pivot.
That's it. And the thing, to your point, like, is it going to get stale? Well, if you get bored of it, then yeah, probably.
Right.
But
right.
it won't, but it's new to them.
Yeah.
right? So if it's new
Yeah.
to
There's
them,
there's a
but
balance there. You got to strike the right balance, right?
that's
Yeah.
it. That's it exactly. Man, is there something you've experienced as an entrepreneur or achieved as an entrepreneur that you would say, like, you put on the pedestal, like, this is the thing that I'm most proud of? This is a moment or this is an experience that I'm most proud of.
So there's kind of this micro moment with every client fulfillment that I do when I do things in person, right? So when COVID happened, of course, and we all had to shift to remote work and operating our business and everything, I kind of joked and said, well, I'm an introvert anyway. I've been training my whole life for this, and this is great. And then when the pathways opened up again, and we were allowed to be in the same room with people, I realized how much I had missed it.
Mm.
And, so there's a lot of what I do that is remote. I have a lot more conversations like this over Zoom or Teams or whatever. And we can still get a lot of that work done. But when it comes to facilitating a retreat or a group coaching program or a strategic planning session or some sort of team dynamics workshop, the value of being in the same room with the participants, with those leaders, with those teams, it is really priceless to me. And I feed off of the energy that's in the room, and it's just a different level of energy. It's kind of capped when you're remote and you're virtual. So there's this moment that happens when I'm in the room with a group of people, and whether they've worked together forever and they just sort of need a reset and a re-energizing, or they're a brand new combination because they're a culture that's, gone through a merger or what have you. There's this moment that always happens, and it's this, what I call this breakthrough moment, right? So whatever the focus is of that retreat or that workshop or that experience, I always say I'm the least important person in the room. Like, I'm not coming in there as some sort of college professor where I have all the answers. I'm a vehicle to get those answers out of you, right?
Mm.
And it's all around, yes, it's around facilitation. Yes, it's around creating an environment where people can be vulnerable and real and not defensive and not threatening. But the answers are within them. And they just need somebody to help them get out of their own way and share them in a more productive fashion, right? And so that's kind of what I love. But what I get out of it, I'm determined that there's no retreat that's just sort of a feel-good experience, and then they go back to the way they were always doing things, and our time together becomes a distant memory. I'm very dedicated to creating experiences where they can actually do something with it to move the needle on their business outcomes. So that's the value they get. But the value I get is there is this moment that happens where they break through, and it's so magical to witness because it happens every time.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of this, like, whether it's a light bulb moment where it's, whether it's two people who walked into the room, like, completely clashing, and they finally understand each other on a deeper level, or there's this problem they've been wrestling with at an organizational level that they come together and collaborate and they find a solution, and there's all this energy around. It happens every time. And while they're doing that and they're learning and they're coming together and they're getting sort of this action and this energy around what they want to do next, I get the honor of witnessing it.
Oh man.
Yeah, like,
Ah.
like, you can feel it, right? And
Yeah.
it's just, and when that happens, like, I don't go in there like intent on that moment. I want to push them through that and get to, like, their business value, but it happens every time, and that's what drives me. That's the value I get. That's why I do what I do, because it's so amazing when it happens. And it's just like, there are times when I have to kind of turn around and go, like, and because, like, I get all teary eyed because it's like, that was a beautiful thing. Like, and I don't want to pause, like, and like point it out to them because I don't want to disrupt the flow.
Yeah.
But for me to witness it is so, like, it's so life affirming. And I know that sounds a little bit hokey, but it's like, it's what drives me.
No, I get it. I get it 100%. And I know that I've had these experiences where if I'm facilitating something like what you're describing, there's a moment right before the breakthrough where you can see it coming in the distance.
Yeah.
And so that's when I have to check myself because I start to get excited. I got
Right.
okay. Don't
I know
calm
you
down.
can't show, right? You have to have a poker face because you don't want to scare it out of them, right? You don't want to like scare them off their track, and then there's so you just described the moment before the moment. The moment before the moment before the moment, you have a little bit of fear that this is going to be the one time that it doesn't happen, right? Because it's like, because there's this friction that has to happen before the flow, right?
Yeah.
There has to be, it's sort of like when you're in an argument with your significant other and you fight over the same thing every time, and you then kind of break apart and you go to separate rooms or whatever, like, and you never finish the argument. And then it's like, well, we keep arguing about the same thing. It's like, we keep arguing about the same thing because we never just stand in that place and then break through it to get to the other side. We keep getting to the place where it's become too difficult or too uncomfortable, and then we retreat.
Yep.
And you can't break through that way. And it's the same with business. It's the same with leaders, and it's the same with teams. You have to get to that point of friction. And then usually it's somebody like you or me who has to stand in that moment with them and give them that gentle nudge to say, this time, keep going.
Yes. God, oh man, it's such a powerful thing. And I think so much revelation comes from those moments. Yeah, it's a skill set that's so necessary in so many different contexts. One of the experiences that I like, it continues to resonate with me across professional spaces that I experience. There's always an air of confusion, right? You come into a space, team is struggling with each other, trying to figure out how to move things forward. Folks are just, I'm confused. I don't really understand how we're supposed to do this. I don't really understand how we're supposed to do that. And then you start asking questions. Okay, well, help me understand what you're confused about. Let's figure out where the confusion is exactly. And I call it graduating, because they graduate from confusion to dissent. And it's like, oh, you were never confused, you just didn't like it.
Yeah.
And that's a graduation, because now we have something that we can actually move through. Confusion can just stall us out.
Well, and confusion is a lack of specificity, right? And until you've got somebody from the outside kind of gently pushing them out of that little comfortable bubble, because it's too easy to just say, well, I'm confused, or I'm not clear, or I'm not this, and then just continue to bang your head against the wall. And it's like, how good does that feel after a while, right? So yeah, you've got to move them out of that, because they're not getting to a place where either in their own minds, or at least through their own words, they're specific about what they are unclear on. And I think that is such an important call out that you just made, because I think that is the source of a lot of friction between managers and direct reports. They're just not on the same page because they're not specific enough. And you can't have, the employee walk in and say, well, I'm confused about what you asked me to do. And have the manager go, well, what didn't you understand about that? And we shift into this defensive mode, right? Like, I want to be confused because that gets me out of doing what you're asking me to do. And the manager says, I want you not to be confused because I can't stand managing people, and I'm regretting all my life choices that led me up to this moment, right? You got to push through that. And you got to say, let's get specific. Like there are exercises, like you were just kind of saying, getting them to that point of graduation, asking them the 5 whys, like, why are you confused? Or why is this coming up for you? Why is this a struggle? And peeling away those defensive layers and getting to the heart of it, because more often than not, there is some common ground at the real heart that they can kind of build upon, but they don't take the time to peel back those other layers that are just defense mechanisms. You got to put in the work. I say that to managers all the time who say, oh, these people frustrate me or whatever, and I'm constantly having turnover in my department. And it's like, do you enjoy having to hire over and over for the same position? No, I hate it. I hate interviewing. I hate the whole process. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, so how about just throwing it out here? How about you maybe be a little bit more intentional about what you're doing once you bring them in, how you train them up, how you set them up for success, how you give them feedback. Like, there's a cause and effect here that you're dismissing because it's too hard or it's not clear. You know what I mean? Like, there's just, oh my God, like we just put so many barriers up that don't have to be there. Like, let it go. Like, I know I keep saying like, let it go, but I think that's sort of the running theme. Like, what are the things that you're holding on to that don't serve you? They don't serve your team. They don't serve your business. They don't serve your mental state. Lay them down. Like, why are you still dragging them around with you?
Yeah, and if things keep going wrong, you're the one that's leading. Somewhere there's a common denominator.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Somewhere we can find the thing that exists across these experiences. My best guess is if you look in the mirror, you're going to find them. Best guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, this is, but that the work is so fulfilling and it's so necessary. It's so necessary. And I'm sure that the folks that you've worked with have had experiences that, have taken them above and beyond what they thought was possible. Because when you bring somebody like you into a space where confusion exists, where frustration exists, and folks just can't figure out how to move forward, and then all of a sudden, like the light bulb walks in the room, everything changes. So I'm sure that the impact you're having across these organizations is, beyond what can be articulated. So I just want to encourage you to keep doing that, and keep having a major impact on these people and these teams and these organizations, because at the end of the day, it's having an impact across communities, right? Like, these are people. And when they leave the office, they go home to a family or they go home to a neighborhood. And it's like there's so many connections. And it's all dependent on the individuals who contribute to the society that we live in. So the impact, all that to say, the impact that you're having, I think, is greater than what you might even realize. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm humbled by that, and I appreciate you for saying that. One of the reasons that I do focus so much on, what I can reduce to a 2-word phrase, which is culture work, right? Kind of working on how do you strengthen an organizational culture, because without that, you can't move forward, you can't achieve your strategy. But the impact that you just articulated, how that gets amplified into community, because you're right, there's no one in your organization who is just an employee or just a boss. They are connected to so many other people in their community, and they take home with them that experience that you enable for them in the workplace. And it becomes an extension, good or bad. So the work you put in, the investment you give to your culture pays dividends through the larger community. And until you reflected that back, I hadn't fully accepted the impact of that. So I appreciate you for saying that.
Of course, it's a real thing. Is a very real thing. So one of the things I like to call out in these conversations, the space of these conversations is, and it speaks back to the title, right? Pancakes from Scratch. There's this intersection between culture and food and ambition, right? And there's this, in my mind, there's this idea that the culture that we experience on a day-to-day and throughout our lives, from childhood to adulthood and our professional experiences, is impacted by, the ambition that we have that sort of pushes us into those spaces. But that ambition is also impacted by the culture. And one of the greatest influences on culture is food. What do we eat, when we eat, how we eat, who we eat with, and how we convene, right? And how we share space and time and meals with each other. So there's something there. I'm still exploring it, but all that to say, did you have a favorite food growing up as a kid?
It was probably pizza as a kid, but it's just so funny because in anticipation of this conversation, I love pancakes. And the whole phrase pancakes from scratch, like I consider pancakes one of the best comfort foods there is. And I know some people don't consider it comfort food per se. They think that's, meat and potatoes or a slow cooker meal or whatever. And all that's true. But there's something about pancakes, whether it's Sunday morning after church or it's, you have pancakes for dinner. I mean, what a treat that is, right?
Yeah.
Pancakes from scratch is just it brings up such nostalgia for me because it's just so like, I can't think of a better comfort food than really good pancakes that don't come out of a box, that are just, whipped up by your grandmother or somebody in your family. Like it just evokes this sense of community, this sense of togetherness, this sense of gathering around the same table, without TVs and without devices and without distractions, and just coming together over this common ground of this meal made with love. So I just love that.
So um, hanging out with the kids over the weekend. They love pancakes. So they love to make pancakes. They love participating in the process of making pancakes. So I'm working with them. Hey, get the flour, get the sugar and everything. And we put it all together. And my daughter says, I want strawberry pancakes. Okay. Not a thing I've done before. Let's see how it goes. And we pull some fresh strawberries out of the fridge. We're chopping them up. We're trying to figure out like, how do we do this in a way that makes sense? And we hook them up, and she's eating. She gets to a strawberry. She's like, "Yeah, this is gross." But the thing is, it's never about the food. Really, it's like, it's the experience, right?
Yeah.
It's that whole moment. And
Yeah.
the food wasn't as good as we thought it would be. Still love pancakes. Maybe just got to try a new process to get the strawberry pancakes.
I mean, what a great example of failing forward, right? Like you tried something new, you incorporated an idea that somebody had, and it turned out that wasn't the idea that, you were hoping it was going to be, but now you know that for the future and you don't have to repeat that. But, it's so funny because I'm sitting here laughing when you said you were, you're making the pancakes with your kids over the weekend. And some people, their first reaction is going to be, oh my gosh, the mess that it must have left behind in your kitchen, right? Because like involving other people in your cooking, in your kitchen, especially if it's kids and they're excited about the process, the mess it's going to make, right? And how often do we back away from doing something innovative or doing something together for fear of the mess it's going to leave behind?
Ooh.
Right. And it's like, but just the notion of, and I say that from a gut level for me too, because like I like things neat. I don't do house cleaning as much as I should, but that is one of the things that I outsource. But like this whole concept of like other people being in my kitchen, like I don't like that because then it's a mess. And like I like things the way that I like them, but it's that concept again of letting go, of keeping everything neat and orderly and standardized and whatever. And it, as you just said, it's not really about the food, it's about the experience. And how much richer would our organizations be if we applied your model for making pancakes from scratch with your kids to how we lead teams and how we build organizations? I just love it. I just love the metaphor. I've loved it since, you and I connected and talked about doing this episode. I think it's brilliant.
Oh man, thank you so much. I appreciate it. This has been a really fun conversation. I appreciate you making the time and like just being willing to get into it with me. Like I said, I try to keep these conversations organic, and it's a messy process, but it I think the experience creates something that's super powerful for everybody who gets a chance to see. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Of course, you keep doing great things. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. And
yes, we will.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds for you.
Same here. I really appreciate the time, and we will absolutely stay connected.
Absolutely. You take care. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.